Welcome back. And now I have our second candidate who's running for Precinct 2 Council. He's seeking re-election, Mr. John Munson.
Hi there, John. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Right back at the same place we were 4 years ago.
That's right. John, if you want to take a moment and tell people why you're running for and seeking for re-election.
Well, as you guys probably know by now, I am seeking re-election for Precinct 2, and I would love your vote, but I would like to have earned it over these last 2 years. If you don't know me by now, just a quick background. I've been living here for 20 years. I'm married with 2 children in the school system. One has graduated from high school and is now in college at Salem State, but my son is still a sophomore, and so I have a small business here. My sister and her family live here. My parents live here. My brother's around the corner in Beachmont. So I have a lot of vested interests in this town. But more so than anything, I'm just looking to continue what I've started. There's some major decisions that are looming for this town, the firehouse, the old middle school. And basically, I just want to keep it a safe, wonderful place to be. And I've enjoyed being here, and I hope to continue to be here for as long as possible. And I think that just having a nice, reasonable, sensible, experienced voice on the council is why I'm running for re-election.
Thank you, John. Your son's in college already, you're right. 4 years ago, he was just starting high school, I think.
Yeah.
Or right there.
My
right
daughter,
before.
Sophia, is a freshman at Salem State.
Oh, your daughter.
Owen's still a sophomore
Wow, okay.
at Winthrop.
Time does fly.
It does.
It does fly. So you may have just touched upon it right here. The town has a question on the ballot regarding a new fire station. Mm-hmm. Where are you on this initiative?
Well, as you probably know, we unanimously supported it. Okay. So the councilors are in unison in this. They believe that through a process of over 5 years of looking for one, we have come up with the best solution. Is it a perfect solution? By no means. Wadsworth building is a beautiful old building, and there are some active, vibrant businesses there. But as part of an eminent domain friendly taking, every business would be taken care of. And we've already, Anthony Marino, should I say, the town manager, has worked very hard to make sure that everyone is accounted for, and there's some really good packages out there. So I don't feel bad at all about the relocation. I feel like everyone has been taken care of. As far as the location, there's a lot of people that are talking about the old middle school. I think that the old middle school is an opportunity. It's one of the last puzzle pieces in Winthrop. It's an opportunity to sell that property or to develop it where it can generate revenue. If we replace it with the firehouse, we actually are taking an opportunity cost that's pretty big. We're replacing a revenue stream with an expense. And so, in my opinion, this is a very safe choice. It's at the top of a hill. There's never going to be any flooding here. It was strategically chosen being on Winthrop Street, where it's actually a great cut through across both sides of town. They can get to any location in Winthrop within 5.5 minutes, and I think that with the way Scott Wiley speaks about his guys and the staff, I think it's our duty to protect the firemen that are protecting us. And as of right now, it's not just a wish list, it's a necessity to get a new building in place. This isn't a perfect solution, but it's a very good one, and I'm in support of it.
And you know, something that it's interesting because the person who owns Wadsworth Building, you know, if the town doesn't purchase it, it sounds like he's selling it regardless. And so that you don't know what you're going to have put in there, correct?
Well, we can guess that it'll most likely not be an office building with retail downstairs. It'll most likely be sold to the highest bidder, which is basically housing. Right. So it's going to be more housing right there.
And so the people that are in there currently would be displaced
either way.
Either way.
Except with us, we're covering their costs, making the transition as seamless as possible. As of right now, I think every business has been accounted for.
Okay.
So I think we're in good hands. We would never being a small business owner, I would never do something rash or detrimental to another small business without having some nice plan Bs in place.
Thank you. So you've been on the council for the last 2 years?
Almost 2 years. It'll be, right. In January, it'll be 2.
So you've had a little experience with municipal budgets, because I wanted to ask, what is your experience with those municipal budgets, and what have you learned from it, I guess would be my question to you.
Well, I mean, we've gone over it in in granular detail at some of those subcommittee meetings. I've been just volunteered to kind of, in addition to just being a town councilor where you actually are presented a budget, I've gone to a lot of the FinCom meetings and I've reviewed the budget at length. I've asked some of the people in the accounting office, annoyingly so sometimes, those questions, but I have gotten to understand both the revenue side and the expense side. You know, and we have only so many revenue streams. We're not a big town, let alone city, where we have a big business revenue or industrial revenue. We're basically just a property tax revenue is our number one number one revenue generator, and outside of that is like state aid. So we really don't have a lot of revenue coming in other than those two major things. We have some fees, et cetera, et cetera. And then the expenses, we are, 60% of our budget goes to the school. And then a lot of them goes from there. It goes to fire, well, it goes police, fire, DPW, and so you really get to understand how the whole budget works. And then I actually understand how the enterprise funds work. And I've really enjoyed the process of understanding it. And after 2 years, I feel like I have a good grasp on it. And you can't move money without taking from something to replace something else. So you have to, by law, always be balanced. So I feel I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay. So as the council member, and you just touched upon that as well, we talked about school budgets. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you, and perhaps what your role has been as you perceive, and what's related to the school district and the school budget. Because you talked, it's 60%.
Yeah.
So how do you feel your role as a council member is with the school budget?
I mean, we do very little actually working with the school committee. We basically help get the school committee appointed or elected, but in essence, we let the school committee do their work. And we don't really have much say in the ins and outs. They hire the superintendent. Lisa Howard's doing a great job. But in essence, as a town councilor and as a citizen, I'm really trying to get as much money for that school as possible. I mean, I feel for that school. I mean, I'm very lucky to have two kids that have gone pretty much through the whole school system from start to finish. And so I know where the strengths and weaknesses are, and I feel as though Lisa's trying so hard to kind of get as much money as possible to keep a level service. And I feel bad that it has to be just a level service. Why not strive for an excellent schools from top to bottom? We are blessed that we have all new schools. We have a great environment for kids to grow up in and to learn a lot from. I just would love to be able to, as both a citizen and as a counselor, to give them as much as possible so that they can really be above and beyond just level service.
And as I was talking, being a superintendent and understanding that, we carry that 2.5%. However, the bills aren't coming in under 2.5%.
No.
I'm sure you're well aware of
Yeah.
that. And this past year, 14% was allowed for out-of-district schools to go to 14% increase. So when they went to 14% increase, that took 11.5% right off of our budget. So
It doesn't, yeah. The math doesn't always add up. When we have that 2.5 proposition override, there's really it's really a uphill battle for a lot of municipalities.
Well, I think at its time, and I remember I disagreed very vehemently with my dad, but I was just a high school senior in '81, who said, "Oh, we're going to support this. I got to support this." I understand when I look back at why, because at that point they could just do anything.
Right.
But I think we went from one extreme to the other extreme, and we're still kind of stuck in that other extreme. And city and towns like Winthrop and Melrose and other groups, Stoneham, they're suffering.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it probably will be brought up again, but when you talk about inflation at 8 and 10% over the course of the year, and you're forced to stay within a 2.5%, I mean, you're looking at problems, and so something has to, add up, and so, that's where we end up with fees, and where we normally wouldn't, like school, like sports fees, where they normally weren't there, so, would I like it so that it was all paid for as part of your taxes as a homeowner? Yeah. But sometimes you can't have that all because of the rules and the 2.5. So.
Right. So let's talk about the fees, because you bring, since we're talking
Yeah,
about
we're
it,
already on that.
they've initiated some additional fees through the past couple of years, and of course one has been the annual trash fee.
Right.
And I always know when they're talking about trash fees, because usually I know that's coming because I'll see it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Through the mail. But I mean, how do you feel about it?
I mean, It's $160. So let's not make a capital case about $160 when, like we said before, with inflation being upward 8 to 10%, and we're forced to keep our taxes at 2.5%, we actually had to, because of the assessed values of our homes in this town, we had to reduce the tax rate just so that we wouldn't go up above 2.5%. If we were able to keep our tax rate, we would have made plenty of money to cover those expenses for trash. But because of the law that we have set for ourselves, we can't. So that's where those expenses come up. So, if you think about it, if you would rather not have any new fees, and there are some people that are fighting, diametrically against this. If you were really that against $160, what does that add up to ultimately? If no one paid that $160, that means that $700,000 would have to come off somewhere else on the budget. When you think about the majority of our budget is personnel, that means jobs. That means teachers, firefighters, police, DPW. Someone would need to be cut in multiple jobs. $700,000, I don't know if you could do an average salary, but that's well over 12 jobs being cut. So what's a $160 over the course of a year to get your trash picked up every week? I mean, some of these things are out of our control as well. The cost of trash has gone up precipitously, and China stopped taking recycling. It used to be a profitable section to offer our recycling. It's not there anymore. Maybe it'll come around and we can get it back off, and I don't think that there's anything off the table on that regard. I'd love to see that happen. But for the time being, it's an understandable expense, and it's actually, if you look at around the state, it's not that abnormal at all to have those fees. It's actually quite common.
And I noticed that too this past year, they're splitting it.
Right, into two, so it's even more digestible.
Right. So you talked about it at the very beginning, the old middle school.
Yep.
And I'm kind of surprised we're still talking about the old middle school.
Yep.
But what is your vision for the future of this site?
Well, it really doesn't matter what my vision is. I do have some ideas. I've had some ideas for the years, and actually, believe it or not, that was the catalyst that got me to be in the town council. Okay. I was tired of seeing a vacant building costing the town thousands of dollars every year, and I couldn't hear myself complain about it anymore. So I didn't shut up. I needed to put up, and so that's why I became a town councilor. So here we are, still talking about it. And so it is a complicated issue. I think that there's some ideas that have been worked through. I mean, I think that in 2017, there was some great planning going on, a lot of input from the town. I think there were some great ideas presented that I would love to see be represented. Ultimately, what I see for a vision is having a very open process, not just a unilateral, one idea here, take it or leave it kind of thing, where we're actually taking an RFI that was given to us from another town and just repurposing it for that same developer to do the same thing in our town, but to make it broad. Because the truth of the matter is developers have experience, they have imagination, they have very wealthy people doing very smart things. Let's let them propose ideas to us, and as a council and as a town, use the people's input and the town council's filter to be able to choose the best choice that's presented to us. So that's my vision. If it were up to me, at one point I thought hotel, and then my wife and my mother-in-law were like, "Are you crazy? We don't want a hotel." And then but the truth of the matter is I would love to see a community center. We need to see that a great rink, stay in town, so hockey towns, a Ruzioni town. And then also, ultimately, we're really lacking in the housing, and we need to be responsible in that regard. It can't be just any kind of housing. We have a traffic problem, we have a parking problem. So it has to be with compromises that accommodate for these problems that we have. So we have needs, and we need to fulfill them.
Okay. So let's just hold on. Water rates.
Water rates.
So and I know that we had just talked about the other fees and stuff. What's interesting is in Winthrop, you know when the water rates go out, because it's all of a sudden it's a Facebook topic everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's a hot issue. But do you have any recommendations regarding our current rates, or how we can defray, or any of these additional increases?
I do. I do, and it is tough, but we inherited an old problem. We settled on an agreement, but either way, whatever we had handed to us, I think the important thing is what we can do now. And I think that we just recently had a water audit that revealed $1 million in water loss per year.
Wow.
$1 million. If you were able to save even half of that, you would actually cut our water rates down tremendously. So I think that the solution to reducing the water rates is resolving that water loss. The audit said something along the lines of 17 different water leaks all around the water system. So instead of just, in my opinion, it makes more sense to handle the problem than to do a routine water main replacement. It seems like you take care of the problem first, and then you can go ahead and continue the routine. And that's where I think that, and also the meters. If we're updating the meters and making sure that everyone's usage of water is metered and monitored, you know, we just found out that the rink was never actually being metered. And then they were doing an Eruzione, I mean, that Eruzione rink is actually using something like 250 gallons per Zamboni. So that's never been measured. And then now we finally got it. You got a water meter there. The enterprise is going to be responsible for that. You know, there's some other things like that that we can find some accountability. But just updating the meters in every home, I know that we can expedite that. We can make that faster. We can solve the water leaks problem. We just had some water mains break recently, and we had some water brownage and some so forth. Let's take care of that first, and then we can actually start recouping some of that cost, and then we can maybe save some and reduce that rate.
I wasn't aware of the audit on the what that found.
It was a headliner, and it was but it was quickly kind of, you know, addressed, and it kind of moved on. But the problem's still there. And while we are still replacing a lot of water main, and we've done a great job, and the DPW has done a fantastic job of aggressively, ahead of schedule, replacing water mains, we have not actually tackled some of the actual leaks. And I think that would just take, you know, a water company like we already have to find those leaks through some scoping and what have you, and then address them first.
Okay.
I'm not an engineer, but sometimes you put out the fire, so to speak, first, and then you can go ahead and do maintenance.
Sure. So earlier you had addressed the problems of revenue, right? So Winthrop seems to have a revenue issue. You talked about it. And you may have even skimmed a little of it, but what are some of the ideas you bring to the table maybe for the town to earn more revenue? Well,
I think Jim Lettieri's idea of having that sports complex has been toyed around with that 125,000 that he also proposed some townhouses right on the edge of Waldemar on the slope going down. So that would generate close to $200,000 a year in revenue at the old middle school site. There's a possibility if we were to just get more housing near, you know, more housing and like condos, not necessarily apartments, so that we're getting the right kind of people in here. I think that we could actually generate more. There also needs to be some understanding that we are going to develop more in this city. We're actually, you know, as far as population growth, we're one of the slowest in all of the North Shore and the whole eastern seaboard of Massachusetts in terms of population growth. If you look over the decades, we actually haven't changed that much. We actually retracted, believe it or not. So it's not necessarily, you know, the planning board controls a lot of those developments. We just need to make sure that the proposed developments provide for a reasonable amount of parking and traffic congestion doesn't get out of control. So I think that, you know, you put key developments in good locations. I think Veterans, where overlooking the golf course would be lovely. That area where, you know, Shirley extends, you know, that would be a fantastic location for a couple of developments. Just intelligent decisions that you don't go overboard and have everything becoming a 3 or 4 level house or building, but just being basically cautious development is going to be a good revenue generator in addition to the old middle school site. So now you've been elected. I mean, you were appointed. Appointed, yeah. You were appointed by the town council. And so, but you realize you're one person out of 9 in that town council.
and you might have some passionate ideas that you want to get through.
Right.
So talk to me about what your strategies, or how do you go about getting your initiatives passed?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I think I'm good for this position is because I have a relationship with everybody. I have a working relationship and a friendship. And when I said in my letter to the editor a while back how much I enjoyed this position, it's not a joke, it's not fake. I really love working with my fellow councilors. Every single one of them to me is a friend. And I respect them on a professional level as well. So I'm one of those guys that doesn't stick to just one group. I'm open to all ideas and to all people. So I think being kind of a centrist and that middle child that kind of works together to find solutions will help me get things accomplished. That's just my nature. And I was on a jury not too long ago. It was a hung jury. Who was there convincing those last two people to come to the other side? It's just what I do. It's just I find common ground and I get people to see along the same lines. I'm looking forward to getting a lot accomplished in the next couple of years. And if I get elected, I will do so.
And how have you learned the art of compromise on that board?
Well, I am married successfully for 20 years, so yes, compromise is part of the game.
Well, it seems, when you look at the national and all of this, that it's like, nope, this is my way or no way. And so
yeah, that partisan politics has really been self-defeating, quite frankly.
So that's why I ask, when people who are coming on, are they going to be able to work together and compromise with what they're doing for the decision?
I mean, I already have a relationship with Suzanne Swope, and John DeRoss and I are quite friendly. He's a great guy. I'm looking forward to working with them. And then as far as Max and Todd, I'm friends with both of them. I've gotten to know Max recently, and I think he is a political natural. He is just, I think he'll be great. I think Todd's got a lot of great ideas. He's a little abrasive to work with, but I would work with him as well. So I'm willing to work with whoever's there. And I don't think that we have a lot of time for inaction and more studies. I think we need to get some public hearings, some community input, get an RFP out there, and move forward with the old middle school redevelopment as soon as possible. And then I also think the firehouse, if it doesn't pass now, it's going to be represented probably at the same location within a year based on what I've been hearing from Chief Wiley and the Town Council President Jim. So we are going to make big things happen in the near future. And that's part of that is just working together as a team.
Okay. So communication, it's huge, right? Especially in your role.
Yeah.
So what communication tools have you used, or what have you done since you've been elected? Appointed.
Appointed.
As the councilor for Precinct 2.
I do think that Winthrop's got a communication problem. Okay. I'm not going to, I think that what happens is it becomes like there's a vacuum. What happens is someone sends an email and it goes into a group of the town council and no one really knows who should respond or who shouldn't. If it's my precinct and it's my constituent, I take it. Without question, without doubt. But there's a kind of a vacuum of communication. We have gotten better since Tony's been on board. That town manager's blog has become much more informative and it's been consistent, and Larissa and Tony do a fantastic job with that. So I think that anyone that is actually looking for information should definitely subscribe to that. The transcript is a reliable form of communication as well, but to me it's not enough. From what I've said just in those few words, it's only the information that's being shared is only going to people that are looking for it. And I think that's a problem. I think that people that aren't necessarily active in local politics should be in the know. I think information should be shared regularly through the forms of, with our water bill, with our real estate property tax bill, with our, with all forms of communication to the public, there should be information being shared with what's going on in the town. And I think that's another form of communication. I will say one last thing about Facebook and social media. It's a natural tendency to avoid it. What happens is you're on it as a citizen, but then when you're as a town councilor, you're scared because you're going to get lynched and mobbed, and if you actually say the wrong thing, it's a dangerous platform to kind of just go ahead and throw whatever, But there's so much misinformation on social media that it's a crying shame, and I think there should be someone ready to kind of handle that. It's too much for any one person to watch all the commentary and to make sure that no misinformation is being shared. But maybe as a group we could handle it. Ambassadors to you know, the community. I don't know, but
No.
it's not enough.
So this question I always like to ask, it's really more of a personal to you. I'd like to know 3 words that best describe you and why.
I've been using, I mean, it's a tough one because, I mean, I consider myself dynamic.
Okay,
So,
that's one.
all right. I think experienced now that I've been on the council for 2 years, but I'm also a director of research where my job was to synthesize information and come out with solutions and reports and presentations. So that is a big one. So I'm a communicator or a synthesizer, I guess, but experience essentially, and then inclusive.
Okay.
But I think reasonable has to be thrown in there because I don't jump the gun. I try to listen to everybody. I try to make, after getting all the information, an analytical and compassionate choice. That to me is reasonable. So I would say experienced, reasonable, and inclusive, because I'm a world citizen. I was born in Chicago. I've lived in Maine most of my life, but my parents are from all over the planet. We've traveled the world. I see everyone's point of view, and I feel like everyone should be cared for and kindness should be shown.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell your residents why they should vote for you.
Precinct 2 and the rest of Winthrop, don't we live in an awesome town? That's the way I want to keep it. I want to make sure that this town remains a great place for kids to grow up, for families to raise their kids, for business owners to run their businesses, for anyone to just live peacefully and comfortably. We're surrounded by a beautiful ocean. We've got safe streets. And I want to keep it that way. Safety is my top priority. And that means, like, if you're walking to school as a kid, if you're walking or biking around town on Winthrop Shore Drive, if you're driving, you want to feel safe. I want safety to be our #1 priority. And that includes climate resiliency too. I've been on the council now for 2 years. I know what a councilor should and can do. I am going to ask you for your vote on November 7th so that we can finish what we started and make this town what it is and will continue to be a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
And just a reminder to everyone, I just want to remind everybody it is November 7th that you can come out and vote. Make sure that you do. Also on November 7th at 7:30, I and Eric Gaynor will host election results show, so we hope that you will tune in. Thank you, and we'll be back shortly.
Thanks.